Hello, everyone, and welcome to one of the most important episodes ever released on Mormon Stories Podcast. Here's the backstory. In October of 2022, Carah Burrell came into the Mormon Stories studios and brought her friend Eve, who was just recently beginning to learn the problems with Mormon church history, and specifically with Joseph Smith and with his polygamy. And so Carah and I basically spent an hour and a half sharing with Eve some of the basics that we have learned about Joseph Smith, about Mormon polygamy, about Oliver Cowdery, about the Happiness Letter. And it's a unique contribution to Mormon Stories Podcast because it's basically a lifelong Mormon who's just learning about the problems with Mormon church history for the very first time. Carah released this episode or this interview on her own YouTube channel, and it's received almost 700,000 views, which makes it one of the most viewed interviews ever conducted in the Mormon Stories Podcast studio. Well, up until now, it's never been released on Mormon Stories Podcast. So part one of this series is going to be my interview with Eve, with Carah as co-host. That's going to be part one of this series. Part two of the series has been recorded recently. It's basically Eve's parents, Neil and Krista, who were total full believers when this episode with Eve was released. It turns out that Neil and Krista have had their own Mormon journeys since Carah and I released this interview with Eve. And so in part two of this series, we're bringing Neil and Krista along with Eve back on Mormon Stories Podcast to tell their story of their journey with Eve since Eve released that original interview. So it's a two-part episode. You're going to love it. Enjoy part one with me, Carah, and Eve right now, and then make sure and come back for part two with Eve's parents and Eve. And finally, please like and subscribe to the Mormon Stories Podcast channel, to this episode. And if you're not a donor to Mormon Stories Podcast, we would love your donations. Just go to mormonstories.org, click on the donate button, become a monthly donor, because we couldn't do this without your donations. Anyway, without any further ado, enjoy part one of our interview with Eve and Carah Burrell.
John, I love this idea. I don't know if I've ever done this before. Have you ever done this before? Because It's either like an apologist or it's somebody who already knows the information. But I think I just see so much of myself in Eve of when I was first trying to discover things. Like the things you're asking Eve are the exact same questions I had. Whereas okay, well, where do I read this? How do I know that it's legit?
How do I know it wasn't? Well, because in the church they tell you, people who are going to tell you stuff that are trying to get you to not believe in the church are people who are making things up. So and I know part of that is still in my brain.
Nuance Ho.
Hey everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. You'll notice that I am not in my home studio. I am but a dog returning to its vomit, and I am here with the high quality audio and video equipment here at Mormon Stories Studio because John Dehlin is still such a good friend of mine that he wanted to do this series with me about top 15 things that Mormon missionaries will not tell you about the Mormon founder and prophet Joseph Smith. So we did a really popular TikTok series on the Mormon Stories TikTok channel back in the day, and a lot of people wanted more sources. And so we've made 2 videos already. You can check it on my YouTube channel. The link will be in the description of parts 1 through 5 and then 6 through 10. And today we're going to get into 11 through 15 of other things that the missionaries will not tell you, things that are more systemically withheld and purposely constructed to not be told to people who are converting to the church. So we want to make sure that you have as much informed consent about the Mormon church as possible when you are going to be paying maybe 10% of your income for the rest of your life, devoting your life to something, having as much information about the founder of the religion, I think is super important for people to move forward with. So John, thanks for letting me use your equipment. Thanks for doing this with me.
Oh my gosh, it's so fun to have you back in studio, Carah. Come anytime.
Thank you so much. I miss the lights, the sounds, the smells. I'm so grateful to be back.
Wait, the smells? What are you talking about, the smells?
The smells of a basement. The smells of water and mold.
I need to take a shower. Is that what you're saying?
What?
Are you saying I need to take a shower?
No.
Okay.
You're like 19 yards from me. We want to use as many sources as possible that are church-sanctioned sources. So we're pulling from gospel topic essays and from things like Rough Stone Rolling and as many sources as we possibly can that give people their ability to go to find these links and go do their investigation for themselves. So anything else you want to add to that introduction?
I'm just excited to be here and to close out this 3-part series. The first 2, I think, were received really well. So people still like us collaborating, Carah.
Yeah.
That's just a reality we have to face.
Reunited and it feels so good. Hey, hey.
Most people are like, what is that song? I have no idea what song you're singing.
It's the song I sing every time I walk in the store. Yeah. So since this video is entitled, top 15 things that Mormon missionaries will not tell you, we thought in the second part that it would be good to have a convert in. So we had Sam Shelley, who was a convert to the Mormon Church back in England, and asking her a lot of the things like, would you have appreciated to know these different aspects? What were you made aware of and what were you not? And so for this third and final installment, I want to welcome a really special friend of mine who, when I was living in LA, she was one of the missionaries that was assigned to my home ward in Santa Monica for 9 months, and we became super tight besties. So this is my friend Eve. She's
Hi.
visiting in town from Austin right now, and I asked her
Eve,
if she
fellow
would.
Texan.
Yep. Hey, y'all.
So Eve, welcome to Nuance Ho's YouTube channel / Mormon Stories.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Are you excited to be here?
I am.
Are you excited to talk about Joseph Smith?
Sure.
Are you excited to realize that what you were talking about on your mission that we bonded over for so many months was a lot of constructed lies?
Oh my goodness, that's so harsh, Carah.
I am.
I should say
Go soft. Go reconsider maybe some of the thoughts you had about Joseph Smith.
Are you excited to reconsider some of the thoughts that you had?
I came into your home and preached for 9 months every week, so here we are. You can preach to me.
Oh.
Ooh, she's so humble.
Carah turns the tables on Eve. We're taught one narrative as either investigators or Orthodox members about Joseph Smith, maybe a simplified, some would say whitewashed version of his history, and a lot of really important facts about his character, about his history, about his behavior is intentionally withheld from us, from investigators, and from missionaries.
Yeah.
Well, you ain't seen nothing yet.
I know. I don't even know what I don't know, but I have a feeling I don't know a lot.
Exactly. And so a lot of the people who, either watch Mormon Stories or the Nuance Ho YouTube channel, they're about at the same number. I don't want to get into the math of it. It's just the audiences are both humongous at this point.
Super close.
And people who are interested in deconstructing Mormonism and understanding a lot of the things that were whitewashed and maybe how they were bamboozled, or kind of just deconstructing the different layers of lies and fraud that the church has purposely withheld from people is a big undertaking, and a lot of people don't have time or haven't had the interest in taking that
Or the emotional energy.
Precisely. So pull your emotional energy up by its bootstraps and buckle in. We're going to get into some more of those things. And also, I just wanted to have somebody who doesn't know a lot of these things in real time, who served a mission for the church, react to what she thinks of them.
I will be reacting. It will all be sincere.
And may I just say, from a sincere place, Eve, I just know that you were such a devoted missionary. And so you have different people in your life and thoughts of, when I was leaving the church, and different people that were just beautiful pillars of my testimony. People in my life that just believed the church so much and put their heart, mind, and soul into it. And for me, you were one of those people, for how much you cared about the investigators. And
Yeah, and I'd like to say you two as well were just like a huge pillar of my faith and testimony, just because of I still think you are one of the most amazing people I know. Just so everyone knows, Carah is, I love her. And I don't know, you get to this point, gosh, what the heck? It's so hard to even consider if things might not be true, because all of a sudden, your whole concept and framework of eternity and everything that you thought you knew, you question it, and you think, well, you know, what is my family going to think? Is my family going to stay with me? Am I more important to my family than the church is? And there was a point where, I mean, Carah started doing her TikTok, and it was while I was going through some really, really bad, like, postpartum anxiety and depression. And I remember I just came across her account. Obviously, they show you people that you know, and she had like 50,000 subscribers, and she was doing anti-Mormon TikTok. And at that point, yeah, I wasn't going to church a lot. It was COVID, and at first I was just like, what the hell? Like, if anyone was not going to leave the church, it was going to be Carah. And that's how I felt because of just like the relationship that we had. And so I just got to this point, like, you gave me the courage to say no, like, if I can question these things and I can watch Mormon stories, I can allow myself to hear these things that people have been telling me for years, like, just do not listen. And it'll be okay if it's all wrong. Like, even if it's all wrong, it's you can't accept that. So sorry. I feel like I just
thanks for saying that.
Got emotional, and anyway.
We don't apologize for vulnerability and authenticity here. And I just want to say we're kind of, Carah and I get jokey in the intro. We're not excited or eager to see people have their lives turned upside down. This is really tender. You know, we try and be funny because otherwise you cry or angry.
Exactly.
But we're not here to sort of like revel in someone's world being turned upside down. This is tender stuff. But we also try and
for our own sanity.
Yeah. Try and laugh sometimes too, but we'll try and thread that needle of not being disrespectful to your experience, but also trying to have a little bit of fun.
Oh, you can be as funny as you want. I appreciate the humor. So,
well, Carah can't
I'm a mixed
not
bag
be
of
funny.
both. So
yeah,
Carah can't not be funny. Is that right, Carah?
Well, ask some of the people in my life, maybe like my family. I don't know. On a bad day. No, but I appreciate you saying that, Eve, because that is why I care about this space so much, is because I didn't have the emotional fortitude to be able to question a lot of things that I wish I would have questioned sooner. I wish I would have started deconstructing sooner. I wouldn't have taught my kids. But there's an emotional upheaval that does happen when you take these things really seriously and say, what if all of these things about Joseph Smith and his character, that really dismantles his credibility that I had my testimony based on? What am I gonna teach my kids? How am I gonna live my life? What about eternity? What about all this devotion that I already gave? But it's for people in this ex-Mormon space that are just like, F it. Like, whatever's true that's just the thing that I want to follow. Like, let the chips fall where they may. So anybody who's brave enough to, start anyone who's brave enough to start distancing themselves from just untrue things that are not serving anymore, already, is awesome and is a hero. But I'm really grateful that you came on this video, put your face on a video, and talking about any kind of faith crisis and these really sensitive things publicly is a huge accomplishment. So I'm just grateful that you came out to do this with me. Thanks.
Yeah.
But you're also getting a break from your 2-year-old right now, which Aaron is watching.
Thinking about him right now and how he's probably crying as well. So,
do you want to check on him?
No, it's okay.
Okay. My first Mormon Stories episode, I cried the whole entire time because I was missing my kids.
Oh.
So it happens. All right. Anything else we want to say?
No. Let's dig in.
Okay, so like I said, we're going to read kind of what we mentioned in the TikTok briefly and then get into the sources and add more context to them.
When you were raised in the church and when you were in the MTC and you did, 3 weeks in the MTC?
Yep. English speaker.
So in all the religious education you received in the church up through now, which is how many years? 30 years?
I am 33.
So in your 33 years in the church, what has the church taught you about how many wives Joseph Smith married, while he was alive? We're not talking about people sealed to him after he died. What has the church taught you, and what did it teach you before you became a missionary or while you were becoming a missionary in terms of how many wives Joseph Smith had?
Nothing. I mean, I know he had multiple wives. I knew polygamy was a thing, but I didn't know anything about any of the people's wives or how many or.
So like, let's just say you're imagining Joseph Smith in Nauvoo. He's mayor of Nauvoo. He's prophet for the church. He's head of the Nauvoo Legion. How many wives are you imagining him having in Nauvoo? What's your guess?
I would guess like 4 or 5.
4 or 5? 4 or 5?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
And
4 or 5 wives, maybe?
When you were on your mission, did
I just
polygamy
didn't
ever
like
come
to
up?
think about it, honestly. Polygamy was always something that I tried not to think about because thinking about it just made me sad.
So like when you're teaching your investigators about Joseph Smith and the first vision and receiving the Aaronic and the Melchizedek priesthood, how many wives did you tell your investigators that Joseph Smith had?
We didn't talk about it.
You didn't?
We didn't talk about polygamy. I mean, if they brought it up, it was like, yeah, polygamy was practiced in the church and it's something that we no longer practice anymore. And I feel like...
But you wouldn't have brought it up, right?
No.
So nowhere in your 6 discussions?
I don't remember. It's been 10 years.
Okay. Let's just say there were 6.
Yeah.
Did the church ever have you proactively teach
Polygamy.
the investigators about the church's practice of polygamy?
No.
Okay. So she said 4 or 5. Carah, do you want to do the reveal?
Yeah. So not only did Joseph Smith secretly marry between 30 and 40 women, but he also lied to his own church, many of his top leaders, to the general public, and to his own wife, Emma, about his secret polygamy. In fact, even though Joseph's polygamy revelation stipulates that the first wife must approve all subsequent wives, aka Law of Sarah, Emma was sealed to Joseph after 20 plus other women were already sealed to him, all without her knowledge. Given Emma's angry reaction while discovering Joseph's affair with 16-year-old live-in servant in the barn, it's understandable why Joseph would keep his first 20-plus marriages from his wife.
Okay, so there's a lot there. So, Eve, let's just start. 30 to 40 living women in Nauvoo married to Joseph Smith. What, did you know that?
Well, no. I mean, I knew I had an idea the number was higher, but that's insane.
30 to 40?
That's crazy. Yeah. Where I can ask questions. Like I have questions. Were they already married? Was he having sex with all these women? Like where, and he was doing this secretly. Like, how do we know if he was doing it secretly? Is it like from his journals or their journals or? Yeah, I mean, obviously, all those
are
questions.
good questions.
I don't know where this
can get
information even comes from.
Yeah.
Where does this information come from, Carah?
LDS Church History of the Church, Volume 6, Chapter 9. We have Joseph Smith denying it in some ways, where this is what we mean by secretly and lying to the public. He'll say things like, what a thing it is for a man to be accused of committing adultery and having 7 wives when I can only find 1. Things like that, where he was publicly denouncing it, but privately marrying these women in secret ceremonies, and a lot of the other top leaders of the church, also them being able to marry other women. And then the scariest ones come to have to do with underage girls, especially ones that were living in his home, being his live-in servant, and just all of the implications with different power structures, being the prophet, really always made me uncomfortable. And rightly so. It's hard to investigate these things because it's hard to know the answers of, well, was he sleeping with them? Were they just sealed? But we have a lot of sources that tell us that he was having sex with many of them, and that was an intention from the beginning of it, that abortion was an available practice in Nauvoo, surprisingly, and that he also was sending men from the church on missions to go teach in foreign countries, and then while they were gone, committing a thing called polyandry, which is now marrying that man's wife and sealing her to himself
Without them knowing.
without their knowledge.
Okay, so you said in the book he said he only had one wife. So where do you get all the information about all the other people?
What was weird was that the Doctrine and Covenants at the time, the 1835 Doctrine and Covenants, actually, in I believe it's section 101, it prohibited polygamy. So it basically said the church's stance, this has been removed from the current Doctrine and Covenants. But the Doctrine and Covenants at the time said the church, believes that one man should have one wife, and that's it. So number one, the scriptures, along with the Book of Mormon, prohibited polygamy. Joseph was secretly practicing it. He was having sex with those wives because later the reorganized church was denying that Joseph ever practiced polygamy. And so the Utah Salt Lake City Mormon Church had Joseph's former wives called in to provide sworn affidavits, and Joseph's former wives signed sworn affidavits that they were married to Joseph in very deed. You probably know what that means. And so he definitely had sex with many, if not most, if not all of these plural wives. The church now acknowledges in the Gospel Topics essay, they give this number between 30 and 40. That's the church's number now. As far as Emma not knowing about it, it's widely acknowledged by believing Mormon scholars that Emma was about the 22nd wife sealed to Joseph. So
If my husband does that to me,
if he
Right?
secretly marries 22,
I'm gone. Okay, Casey?
if he secretly marries 22
Right.
women before, also he married these 22 women before Emma, before he received D&C 132. So eventually he receives D&C 132, which is the polygamy revelation. He doesn't receive that until after Emma freaks out, is super mad about the 22 wives. And then he goes to Hiram and says, man, Emma's really mad. We got to get a revelation. So then he goes to God and dictates D&C 132 to Hiram after he's already married 22 other women. So you'd think the revelation would come
Yeah.
before the 22 marriages, not after.
Yeah. So the information about all the other women you're saying is coming from the sworn affidavits of
That
the
Joseph had.
testimonies of the women.
And their journals. There's a really good book called In Sacred Loneliness by Todd Compton, where he gives the history of each chapter is one of Joseph's 30 whatever wives. So
it's like from public records.
so
It's from
their
like
journals.
church history.
So the personal journals of the wives of Joseph Smith, along with church documents and these sworn affidavits that the church wanted made public because there was a succession crisis. When Joseph died, Brigham Young said that he was in charge, but Joseph Smith's son and Emma said that Joseph Smith III was in charge. And so Brigham was claiming to be in charge, but also Emma and Joseph Smith III in the reorganized church were claiming to be in charge. So the reorganized church said, all that polygamy stuff, that was Brigham Young. Joseph Smith never practiced it. So ironically, the Utah Brigham Young-based Mormon church rounded up the living wives of Joseph Smith and had them swear in sworn testimony that they were Joseph Smith's wives in very deed. So that information
is this where is it publicly available?
You can
information?
You can read Rough Stone Rolling, which is a biography sold by Deseret Book by the church's leading Joseph Smith historian, Richard Bushman. In that book, Richard Bushman will acknowledge the numbers between 30 and 40.
Oh, okay. And how,
and
is
the
there a
Gospel
way
Topics essay.
that I could read the journals of the women?
Yeah, you just get the book In Sacred Loneliness.
Okay. And who was that written by?
Todd Compton. And there's a Mormon Stories episode. One of
Okay.
my very first Mormon Stories episodes was with Todd Compton, the author of In Sacred Loneliness.
That's okay.
So far, John, I love this idea. I don't know if I've ever done this before. Have you ever done this before? Because it's
No.
either like an apologist or it's somebody who already knows the information. But I think I just see so much of myself in Eve of when I was first trying to discover things. Like the things you're asking Eve are the exact same questions I had. Whereas okay, well, where do I read this? How do I know that it's legit?
How do I know it wasn't? Well, because in the church they tell you, people who are going to tell you stuff that are trying to get you to not believe in the church are people who are like making things up. So like, and I know like part of that is still in my brain. Like when he's telling me, like it's written, this book in Sacred Loneliness is written by this person and you've done an interview with them. But part of my brain is going like, well, who is this person? Do they just hate the church? Like,
right. But
and I know that doesn't really make sense, like logically. And I want to follow, like my whole goal through all of this, it's like what Carah was saying, like, I just want to know like what is real. And so, yeah, like having those sources, I want to be able to, like
get your hands on it yourself.
You know? Yeah.
Well, the best source is probably the essay Plural Marriage in Kirtland and Nauvoo. It's one of the Gospel Topics essays. And it will give you the number of wives, the range. Joseph Smith had so many wives, we don't know exactly how many, somewhere between 30 and 40. But the Gospel Topics essay will give you that range. And
I want to I want to hear the stories of the women because I want to know, like, did they want this? Was it something that they were pressured into? Like, I mean, I recently watched the Netflix thing.
Buckle up, girlfriend.
I recently watched the Netflix thing with what's his name?
Warren Jeffs.
That is so creepy and so scary. And you think like everyone's like, oh, well, the church was so persecuted. They were so persecuted for practicing polygamy. But then I look at the case with Warren Jeffs and I'm like, would you be against people going in and trying to break that up? Because that was terrible. And if that's what the church was doing, why are you saying the church was persecuted if they were trying to save women and children? So like, that's how my mind's going right now. And I'm like, I want to know their stories. I want to know.
Yeah, and I think the reason why we wanted to put this one about polygamy in our top 15 things that are hidden is because the general public can look out into the world and they can see obvious cult leaders like Warren Jeffs and just a lot of other cult leaders that you could rattle off the top of your head that when they get it, they accumulate enough power. What are the things that they start doing? And one of the telltale signs is, you know, the top cult leaders, whether it's Warren Jeffs or Joseph Smith, that they start getting underage brides for themselves. And I think it's a general, just American who is literate and watches things, you're going to notice these similar patterns. And if you wouldn't be comfortable with it in Warren Jeffs, why are you comfortable with it in Joseph Smith? And so a lot of Mormons have that reckoning that they have to come to terms with, that if they were FLDS, would they see everything that the FBI is doing as just persecution? Probably not. You'd probably realize that this is just trying to give women and children the best chance at life that they can outside of the control of authoritarian religious leader that controls every aspect of your life down to what you wear, your sexuality, and being sealed forever. So a lot of the same through lines that exist in Warren Jeffs and other famous cult leaders exist in it with Joseph Smith. And that's why it's important to put this in there, because missionaries are obviously going to leave that part out, because it's a triggering point for a lot of people who are familiar with polygamy in just the mainstream society.
Well, and I think they're going to leave it out because they weren't taught it. Like, it's not them. Like, I don't think missionaries are maliciously going out.
Yeah, we'll get to that at the end.
Anyway.
But let me go ahead and read. So I'm reading this Plural Marriage in Kirtland and Nauvoo. So this is on LDS.org. And it says, evidence indicates that Joseph Smith participated in both types of sealings, and these are live in-person ones and celestial ones. The exact number of women to whom he was sealed in his lifetime is unknown because the evidence is fragmentary. And then if you click on the footnote 24, they bury this in the footnote. It says careful estimates put the number between 30 and 40. So this is on LDS.org.
Wow.
Just so you...
But in the footnote.
They put the number in the footnote.
I guess you call them apologists. Do they give reasons like, oh, well, they wanted to grow the church, or these people need to be sealed to a righteous man, or like give reasons for why?
Yeah, they definitely love to I think we have an instinct where we know, like, that feels wrong that you're a prophet and you're just kind of collecting wives. And there's quotes from Joseph Smith where he's like, you know what seems wrong by the rest of the world, actually God, he doesn't view it as wrong. And you know what, God actually talks to me about what's right and wrong. And what's right is you, really hot young girl, is coming and marrying me. So things that we just instinctually know are like, that feels really wrong and immoral and unethical for our prophet to be doing. And there are apologists who try to smooth that over by saying like, well, we don't know if they ever had sex. We don't have a video camera. Who are you to say what he did? And just kind of ignore all the evidence that John mentioned earlier. And they try to smooth it over by saying, yes, that the church needed to expand. And a lot of people who are especially just trying to make themselves reckon with the information will say that, well, you know, having polygamy means that there's actually more kids. You know, have you heard that?
The church needed to grow. And so, well, and I mean, people had handmaids in the Bible, right? To have more children.
And so what's interesting is, statistically speaking, they realized through records that Utah polygamy produced less children per woman than monogamous relationships did, because of the ways that the men were traveling around and the resources that the women had and the ways that the women were also like very neglected. And you can't have as many kids when you have just one man's resources and things. So the numbers just don't add up. And the actual beginning reasons of starting polygamy, we mentioned in the top, was called Law of Sarah. John, do you want to describe the Law of Sarah really quick? Because I think that's relevant.
So in D&C 132, it basically says that, so first of all, Joseph Smith, it's clear that he was reading the Old Testament and reading about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Solomon and David, and many of them had plural wives or concubines. And so that Joseph thought he was, engaging in the restoration of all things.
Yeah.
And so in his mind, he's like, well, I got to bring it back. Dang, if Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did it, I better do it too. What's important to notice is that in the Bible, there's like, if none, only then maybe one instance where God actually commanded polygamy. It was just a cultural practice at the time. So there's no suggestion in the Old Testament that God had temple plural marriage as part of his religious ritual. That's something that's important to understand.
Okay, but so it's not like something that needs to be fulfilled for the restoration.
I think a lot of Christians would say that it's not.
I've always hoped and prayed that it's not, but
well, you should read D&C 132 and it'll disappoint you. But the point is, the Law of Sarah is the idea that God told Joseph in D&C 132 that the first wife would have the ability to approve or disapprove subsequent wives. That's the Law of Sarah. So you're the first wife, and then if you're Emma, Joseph Smith says, "Hey Emma, I want to bring on Carah. Is that okay?" You, Emma, could say yes or no to Carah being wife number 2. Now, the problem is Joseph had already married himself to 22 women before he received this revelation that included the Law of Sarah.
How does he have time to do this? I don't know. That's crazy. Sorry.
That's a good question.
Well, anyway. The other thing that you should know is that the next paragraph in plural marriage in Kirtland and Nauvoo. So this is the LDS Church talking. Following his marriage to Louisa Beeman, and before he married other single women, Joseph Smith was sealed to a number of women who were already married. And then you go to the footnote, and it's going to say estimates of the number of these sealings ranged from 12 to 14.
Why?
Yeah,
do they give any?
Why? And most of these men who were already married to the polyandrous wives that Joseph Smith married were faithful members of the church. So if it were about offspring, why would Joseph be marrying the wives of women already married to men?
Yeah.
And that's called polyandry, which is different than polygamy or polygyny.
Yeah.
And were those men still good, faithful members in the church? They must have been if they were serving missions.
Yeah.
And did they know?
Some of them didn't know. Joseph would Yeah.
So how, I mean, I guess maybe we don't know this, but like, how would he approach them, the wives?
That's its own episode.
It's really interesting. We can go into that in the car.
How do you know that?
What you want to Google is something called the happiness letter,
The
which
happiness
gives
letter.
you
Have
an
you ever
idea.
heard of conference talks, especially where they'll say, happiness is the object and, oh, crap, what's the other word?
Yeah.
Is the, what's the word?
Purpose of our existence.
Happiness is the object and purpose of our design.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard that conference talk? A lot of people use that line.
I don't know, maybe. I mean, it sounds just like
So just
something
imagine,
people would
imagine
say.
a really happy, smiley conference talk from like Elaine S. Dalton going, happiness is the object and purpose of our design. You know, the Lord had us so that we can have joy. But that line is a famous line from a thing called the happiness letter, which is a letter that Joseph Smith wrote to Nancy Rigdon.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes. I know one thing. Just kidding. A happiness letter that he wrote to a young girl named Nancy Rigdon. And basically the point of the letter is saying like, you know, the world might have some other things that they might say about polygamy, but God he made us so we could be happy. And you know, it'd make me really happy right now, Toots. And it's a really sleazy letter.
It says what's wrong in one instance may be right in another. And it basically, what he would do is he would sometimes get these young girls into a room alone and he would tell them, you've got 24 hours, your family's salvation is on the line. You can either accept to marry me and your family all gets in and get to be exalted with you as you are married to me. And if you reject my proposal, then you and your family don't get to be sealed to me. It was very coercive and high pressured. When I interviewed Patrick Mason, who is the church's top faithful historian / Mormon scholar, just recently sitting in that chair, when I asked him about Joseph Smith's polygamy, what he said was that Joseph Smith's polygamy looked a lot like sin. That's what the church's top.
where is all this information? I just am like,
it's in the Gospel Topics essay.
of him approaching women like that, like
you can read that
alone?
in Rough Stone Rolling, but a better book to read is No Man Knows My History by Fawn Brody.
Is that a church member or?
She was David O. McKay's niece. So she was the prophet's niece who wrote a truthful, probably the best biography about Joseph Smith that's ever been written. She published it in 1945. And guess what happened to her? I'll give you one guess.
She was killed.
She was excommunicated.
Oh,
Spiritually killed.
oh my gosh.
She goes straight to killed.
Okay.
She was excommunicated for telling the truth about Joseph Smith.
So things
And
that she
she
was
knew this
excommunicated
stuff
for are now in the
because
Gospel
of
Topics
how
essay.
she
went
wasn't
into
old
the church-
enough to know Joseph Smith.
No. She went into the archives and studied the church history and found all the documents, the journals, all the affidavits, and she assembled it all together.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and you keep mentioning Rough Stone Rolling. I feel like this was a book that people were reading while I was growing up. Like,
Yeah, it was released in like 2004, 2005.
okay. But that's a very much accepted church.
Deseret Books sold mountains of Rough Stone Rolling.
And there's all this information in there that's like
Most of it.
sketch.
Yeah.
But people were just like, whoa, this is amazing.
No. Rough Stone Rollings caused a lot of people to leave the church.
Oh, really?
It's
Okay.
been like one of the most
And is
the
it
few
Rough Stone
authentic-
Rolling because they're saying like he's rough around the edges?
Yeah. He said that about himself.
Okay.
He said, I'm a Rough Stone Rolling. But the point is the church, the internet, this is what happened. Prior to 2004, 2005, if anyone would talk openly about this stuff, the church would just excommunicate him.
Am I going to get
No. I mean, no.
Just kidding.
No, I don't think so because you're just learning, right?
Yeah, I'm just asking questions. You're allowed to ask questions.
Well, before 2004, the church would excommunicate people who talked about this stuff openly. After the internet really came on the scene with Google, with blogs, with podcasts, with the CES letter, the church realized that it couldn't keep a lid on the information anymore. And that's what forced the church to come out with these essays. But before 2014, the church hid this information and punished anyone who talked openly about it.
That's sad.
But Rough Stone Rolling was the church's first attempt at trying to address these issues.
Be more transparent.
But they didn't do it themselves. They had Richard Bushman publish it. But it was in 2014 that the church published the essays, which was actually published by the church instead of just...
And it's in the gospel library, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I have people that are always like, go read the essays.
They do kind of make it hard to find. And like you're mentioning earlier, there's this little bit of a haze around anything that seems like it's not faith promoting. If you have a little bit of a sinking feeling, okay, well, that must not be fully true, or that's from somebody trying to tear down the church. So it is kind of a complicated game that people have to play when they're trying to discover what's true by just sorting out their own feelings and their own, you've heard of like cognitive dissonance, right? Where
I have lots of that.
Yeah, where you know something is true, but your emotions and things are going to cloud it and not be able to give you get to the actual root and the truth of what's going on there. So the church has trying to be more transparent because of the push of the internet, because of the people like John Dehlin doing this work and making this information more readily available. But if they could, they probably would never ever want to come forward and actually give the authentic truth to a lot of these things.
Because the church has known about this stuff for 100 years. Or more. It's powerful.
Yeah, because I almost forget. Like my brain used to ask the same questions that Eve was asking. Like, well, how do I know that? Like, what hub was here?
You have to have someone though that's willing to actually question, because that's one thing I've found that's been really hard for me is like the only people I feel like I don't feel walls go up when I try and ask questions are people who've left the church. Even people that I know who are like very open-minded or would say they are. I mean, I do believe they are open-minded people and open to a lot more nuance than many church members. It's like there is a point where it's like this wall goes up, and I think it's to protect ourselves. Our brain is like it. The church is like. It's like cutting off a limb or something, and your mind doesn't want to go there, but you have to like have someone who is willing to go there.
Yeah, like I would never just try and lure some random believer off the street in the Mormon Stories studios and start asking them these types of questions. That would probably be experienced as unethical or abusive. But this is your dear friend.
Yeah.
And you guys have a relationship and you're just willing. And so this is
this is cool.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that I would ever have a chance to do something like this. 30 to 40 wives, 12 of them were married to other men. Some were as young as 14. Sister pairs, mother-daughter pairs. Emma didn't know until like she was like the 22nd wife to be sealed to Joseph.
And they don't give reasons for why Joseph was marrying women
who were 14
or who already had, like, who are already sealed to active members. There's no.
You say a lot of the reasons is like this is for their salvation.
It's the mysteries of God at work.
Okay, yeah. I mean, without me going and actually reading this stuff, taking.
Yeah, don't take our word for it.
I'm very trusting of Carah, but obviously, yes, I'm asking you, like, where are these things coming from? Because I would want to read them.
Yeah, we would want that. Yeah.
I expect my friends to be smart.
I go and I read all this and I'm like, you know what? They're totally right. It sounds really creepy. Like, it sounds like Warren Jeffs. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, once we talked about this with Samantha last in part 2 of the series. You line up all the things Warren Jeffs did. You line up all the things Joseph Smith did. There are some differences. Like, I don't think Joseph Smith raped girls in the temple.
Oh yeah,
but
I forgot about that.
But like shy of that, it's hard. It's hard to make a meaningful distinction. This one's hard to ask.
Yeah,
because it's kind of weird. This is one of the weirdest ones.
Yeah. So have you ever heard anything about...
Have you ever heard of Leonardo DiCaprio?
I'll go with that.
He would only date women 24 and
That's actually a good joke.
That's a good one.
Is that what you're saying?
But no, I'm
You've
thinking
heard
of
of Leonardo
Titanic.
DiCaprio and him dating younger women, but have you also heard of Leonardo DiCaprio saying, "I'm the king of the world"? Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo. If you're familiar with that, you should
Did you
also...
see Titanic?
Yes.
Okay.
She's a 33-year-old white woman, of course.
Who also...
Of course she's seen Titanic. More than once, I hope. Hopefully you had a poster in your room growing up like I did.
I didn't.
Nope. Okay. Anyway, so have you ever heard that Joseph Smith, towards the end of his life, He was running. Have you heard that he ran for president of the United States?
Yes, I have heard that.
And then he also convened a council of 50 where his followers elected him king.
I've heard that in passing just because like I saw something you said one time, but besides something, no.
And all of the curriculum in the church, they never told you that Joseph Smith was not just a prophet, but he thought of himself as a king.
He was basically anointed king of the world.
50 of his followers, was this just like the apostles?
They were called the Council of 50. It was a secret little group of his closest male advisors. And they anointed him prophet, priest, and king. And it was in the context of a theocracy, basically.
Okay, because I was going to say, how's that different than being the prophet? Because if you think about it, like the way we see a prophet, I mean, obviously they're not a king, but... And in the Book of Mormon, sometimes they were prophet and king, right? Or like, I mean, are they trying to use that interchangeably, kind of? Or is it as like, how is it distinct from his title
My
of a
understanding,
prophet?
it was that Joseph had them believe that like Jesus was going to come again and that Joseph was going to rise up as king of the world.
And Jesus would be Jesus?
Yeah, somehow... that Joseph was going to be the king that would usher in the coming of Jesus. But he was not just king of the church.
Why couldn't he just call himself prophet?
I know. Yeah, it's weird. And it's weird if you actually, this is a hard one to ask, but if you actually read the accounts of the Council of 50, it gives you the impression that Joseph just kind of lost his marbles. He was being chased by the law. He was running out of time. He was bankrupt. He had all these wives. Emma was mad at him. And you know how did you ever see David Koresh and like Waco, this prophet where the FBI is all circling in and they're surrounding the house and the kind of this bunker mentality emerges where it's like the world against us and we've got to fight back. It's sort of, and you got to read No Man Knows My History to really understand. But it's in that context that he's like, you almost get the sense that he loses it. But every time he's challenged, he ups the game. And so he's like, I'm not just a prophet, I'm king and I'm king of the world. You know, it's almost like Scarface, Al Pacino. That'd be a good YouTube reference for you to clip in here, Carah.
Is No Man Knows My History a book about, is it an autobiography of Joseph Smith?
It's not an autobiography. It's the best biography ever written about Joseph Smith.
By the woman who was
By
excommunicated?
David O. McKay's niece. So David O. McKay was prophet. His niece wrote this biography, and it's the best. Richard Bushman of Rough Stone Rolling quotes this book more than any other book he quotes.
So she got excommunicated when she wrote this book. Did the church come out and say she actually didn't have access to all that info?
It's all lies. It's full of lies. She's an evil apostate, and she's
How
telling
did she
lies.
even get access to all the church history?
She was David O. McKay's niece.
So she was
up there
just like,
flipping through the files.
la-di-la, I'm going to go.
There's an episode of Mormon Stories where we interview Neil Bringhurst about Fawn Brody's life, but they didn't know what type of book she was going to release. And so she kind of like surprised them with the truth. But
Maybe she was reading things and she was like, I can't not tell the
Yeah,
truth.
exactly.
Maybe she was deconstructing while she found all the...
For sure she was. And to let you know how credible she was, she ended up as a professor at UCLA. And she went on to write authoritative biographies on Thomas Jefferson and on Richard Nixon. And she was super widely regarded as a real high quality biographer. So
part of my mission was on UCLA campus.
yeah. Well, she was faculty at UCLA, Fawn Brody. Your old
And
stomping
the
grounds.
circle continues.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that all we want to say for that one?
Yeah, it's probably the hardest one to really explain. You kind of have to read the history, but
Yeah.
once you read it, you'll be like, King of the World, cue Leo DiCaprio, Titanic.
Iceberg ahead.
It's weird. And most faithful scholars who really study Joseph's Nauvoo time period kind of think he lost his mind by the end, that he just lost it because so many wives, bankruptcy, all the state
Going
and
to
federal
jail.
officials going after him,
He was in jail a long time.
Destroying the printing press, which we're going to talk about in a second. Just everything was collapsing in, and he kind of lost his marbles. And that's best illustrated by him declaring himself king of the world. What do you think, Carah?
Yeah, well said.
Okay.
Cue clip from Hook. I lost my marbles.
Yeah. That's number 2. That's 12, number 2 for today.
Okay, moving on.
Why was Joseph, what were you taught growing up in the MTC about why Joseph Smith went to Carthage Jail and ultimately died? All the people that like put him in jail and ended up killing him, what was their reason for putting him in jail and killing him? What were you taught? What did you teach others about the fact that he was put in jail and ultimately killed?
I mean, that wasn't part of the curriculum before someone got baptized.
Oh.
At least I don't think we.
It was for Jesus, right? I mean, we all know why Jesus was killed, right?
Yeah.
Why not Joseph?
I mean, every movie I watched, everything I can recall, just painted those people who were coming after him as just people who were persecuting the church and didn't like Mormons, and
it's like we're gonna get Brother Joe, right?
Yeah, like really scary. And some people just liked persecuting other religions. Like, I think that's what was in my mind.
The extermination order.
Yeah,
Do you remember that? I always grew up with that same, like a kind of a persecution complex that people are just out to get us because we're part of the true church, and they killed Joseph because he was preaching God's true word, and of course that's going to be hated by the sinful mankind.
Yeah, well, and I think that whole story starts when they tell you about Joseph when he was young, and he would go and tell people that he saw God the Father and Jesus Christ, and that people would just think he was crazy, and that's kind of where that persecution started, and it just...
Right on, yeah.
Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, so the true story behind basically what happened is between the number 13 and then that we're on right now and number 14 that we're going to get into, they're both kind of connected. It's just the idea that Joseph had amassed just so much financial troubles and polygamy, and he was marrying so many underage women and participating in so many illegal practices that his first presidency member, William Law was his name.
So imagine like Henry Eyring or Dallin H. Oaks, like in the first presidency, right? William Law was in the first presidency. Okay.
Yeah. Publicly disclosed that Joseph Smith's secret polygamy was being practiced all across Nauvoo, and he got together with some people and printed a newspaper called the Nauvoo Expositor and just basically outed Joseph Smith's polygamy and just said a lot of true things that the public and the Mormons and the converts needed to know. And
was he like kind of jumping ship then?
Yeah.
It sounds
Right.
like he was like, I can't
So,
go ahead with all this, and I need to tell
yeah,
people.
exactly. So then he used the ability to print it in a newspaper and distribute that. And before he was really able to get that ball rolling, Joseph abused his political power and had the Nauvoo Expositor printing press destroyed and burnt up, which obviously violates the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution.
yeah. So, in the Constitution, freedom of press, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press. Like William Law, first presidency, Joseph's denying polygamy for all those years, like we told you, practicing it but denying it. William Law finds out, first presidency member, says you're lying and this is not of God, purchases a printing press, publishes one edition of the Nauvoo Expositor. Joseph, as mayor, has his henchmen destroy the printing press and all the copies of the Nauvoo Expositor, violating the U.S. Constitution and the Nauvoo Charter's own adoption of the U.S. Constitution, violating the freedom of press. That's why he was put in prison.
Is this information from like, I don't know, court hearings that put him in prison?
Oh yeah, this goes to the top of Illinois. So Governor Thomas Ford of Illinois is like writing Joseph Smith while
Should I
Joseph
read
Smith's
that?
in prison. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so imagine Joseph Smith and all of the Mormons in Illinois are all, he's violating the Constitution. And so the governor at the time, Thomas Ford, in these letters back and forth, the governor says to Joseph Smith, "Now I express to you my opinion that your conduct in the destruction of the press was a very gross outrage upon the laws and liberties of the people. It may have been full of libels,
Which it wasn't.
but this did not authorize you to destroy it. There are many newspapers in the state which have been wrongfully abusing me for more than a year, and yet such is my regard for the liberty of the press and the rights of a free people in a republican government that I would shed the last drop of my blood to protect these presses from any illegal violence."
So like no one disputes, including Downey Jokes himself wrote a book about it. No one in the church disputes that Joseph had the Nauvoo printing press destroyed and that that's why he was put in prison. Now they might say he had the right to destroy it as the mayor, but the governor of the state and everyone around him disagreed, right? But no credible faithful historian in the church would challenge what we're telling you. It's absolutely 100% factual. You were just never told it.
Is it in the gospel topic essays?
Yeah,
Is that one of those things?
I mean, we're grabbing this. There's definitely an essay on the church website about the Nauvoo Expositor and the printing press. Yeah,
and they spin it as this was a bad decision.
That it was a public nuisance. That the printing press was a public nuisance, and for public safety, Joseph had to have it destroyed to maintain order in the city.
Yeah, let me read Joseph's argument back to when he was writing back to the governor. He said, "Could we suffer a set of worthless vagabonds to come into our city?" Joseph replied hotly, "and right under our own eyes and protection vilify and calumniate not only ourselves, but the character of our wives and daughters, as was I don't know that word.
Impudently.
As was impudently and unblushingly done in that infamous and filthy sheet." And so he's basically saying, like, not only did I have the right to do it, but also they were printing lies anyway. So of course I'm going to do that. And then the governor comes back and he's like, "People are going to print a lot of stuff, buddy. It's called being American. Buck up."
But the problem is that everything that was printed in the Nauvoo Expositor has been shown by history to be true. So they weren't printing lies. Joseph wanted to spin it as printing lies, but history has borne out that everything William Law printed, including trafficking. So one of the most disturbing things.
Sex trafficking?
Yeah. If you read the Nauvoo Expositor, what they would do is they would send missionaries to Europe and they would look for the super poor, young, teenage women. And they would say, "Hey, there's a prophet back in the United States. He's a prophet of God. He's got a new book." And these young women would show up in Nauvoo, not even able to speak English. And literally, like Joseph Smith and other apostles and general authorities would kind of like go, "I think she's hot. I think she's hot. I want her. I want her." And these women were literally, by missionaries, trafficked from Europe to Nauvoo to be taken as plural wives of the general authorities.
Okay, I have two questions.
And that's in the Nauvoo Expositor. And that is actually true.
I have two questions. I know you were just reading from obviously this back and forth between the governor and Joseph Smith. But where are you reading that from?
Good question. So No Man Knows My History, page 389.
Okay, and this is the book by David O. McKay's niece, who was excommunicated, and she got all this stuff from the church history.
And from like going to the state of Illinois and looking up the records of Thomas Ford. And
the stuff you're talking about with sex trafficking was from the Nauvoo Expositor.
We have the actual text of the one edition of the Nauvoo Expositor. You can just type Nauvoo Expositor and read everything that was printed on it.
But if what Joseph is saying is true, that it's just all lies, but you're saying history has played out that it's not lies.
That William Law told the truth.
Where's the source of the history that is corroborating the Nauvoo Expositor?
Eve's smart, man. She's like an attorney.
My dad is a lawyer.
That's great. That's awesome.
So
yeah, no.
I'm just trying
You'd have to read In Sacred Loneliness. You'd have to read the Journal of Discourses. You'd have to read History of the Church, statements made by the brethren. you could read the sources that No Man Knows My History would draw from. So that's the thing. You can read No Man Knows My History, and there's a gazillion footnotes.
Okay.
And you could go, and it'll tell you what the sources are for all her assertions.
Okay.
Same with Rough Stone Rolling. Rough Stone Rolling will also tell the story of the Nauvoo expositor, and it will have footnotes where you can go and read the original sources. So we're not asking you to believe us.
No, I know you are.
Just go read Rough Stone Rolling.
And I'm just trying to explain like where my mind is at right now. I'm like, okay.
And I'm just telling you, I've been doing this like 30 years.
Oh, yeah,
There's
I know.
no credible, faithful Mormon historian that would question pretty much anything I just told you.
Okay.
Yeah. One spin. Do you remember Dan?
They wouldn't call it trafficking.
Yeah.
They would call it missionary work.
Well, because
right?
I was going to say, like, when I was in Los Angeles, the only people that would listen to not the only people, but a majority of the people who would listen to our message were people who were poor. So while you're calling it sex trafficking, I could also wonder, like, well, maybe these are the people who are receptive to their message of the gospel.
Sure.
Like,
all I'm saying is a lot of those young women ended up on the other side of the earth as plural wives to general authorities.
Yeah. And I can see
Without
where
their
you're
parents.
connecting all those dots. But like in my mind right now, I'm like, okay, well, I've had this experience and I don't know.
Yeah.
What?
I'm just saying William Law was in the first presidency. That's what he testified to.
Okay. Yeah. I forgot that he was.
So it'd be like Donald H. Oaks saying, I was hanging out with Russell M. Nelson.
Yeah.
And I saw him steal a bunch of money and I was there. And now I'm telling you all, it's William Law was in the first presidency.
Yeah. Okay.
We know Joseph was lying about the polygamy.
I forgot he was the source of the
He's the source of the Nauvoo expositor.
Okay.
So
that's a pretty compelling source.
Yeah. And if you're asking about how people do smooth this over, the thing that apologists like to play sometimes is just look at like small, minute details, but misunderstand like the overarching unethical, immoral problems. And so when me and John made that TikTok video, there's a man who works for the church whose name is Dan, and he wanted to really harp on, John, do you remember he really wanted to harp on the idea that it wasn't actually illegal for him to burn down the printing press because of the ways that the laws were set up at that time, but we know that it actually was completely illegal. And regardless of what like small detail somebody wants to say, I think everyone knows deep down that that's.
How could he say it wasn't illegal if the governor was straight up?
Exactly.
Yeah, because Joseph Smith was mayor and he gets to decide what's legal in his town anyway, basically.
Yeah,
So.
generally the state trumps the city, right?
Yeah.
In terms of what's legal.
Is Dan a lawyer?
No, he's like a linguist or an ancient scripture kind of guy.
Okay.
And we respect Dan McClellan. He's brilliant. He knows more than me. But in this case, I think Governor Ford, start over. In this case, I think Governor Ford trumps Joseph Smith as mayor in terms of knowing, or Dan McClellan, frankly, in terms of knowing what's legal and what's illegal in Illinois in 1844.
Yeah, so there's the
That
Nauvoo
would
Charter.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
The Nauvoo Charter expressly incorporated the U.S. and Illinois state constitutions with their respective protections of the freedom of speech, press, and assembly, etc. But I think Dan's argument to us was that it didn't, that the Nauvoo Charter was allowed to make their own rules on that, and Joseph Smith was allowed to do that without it being illegal. But he was wrong, and we have sources. That's all I'll say about that. Anything else?
Are the sources going to be in the... what's it called? The details, the comments, the notes.
I have a lot to collect, but yes, we have them on a document, but we'll try to collect as many sources.
The
as we can.
description.
The description. Yes.
It's called the description.
All right. Moving on, John.
Yeah. So, I mean, were you ever taught that about the Nauvoo expositor and why Joseph Smith went to prison
No.
or jail? Yeah.
I just thought it was men who were angry and persecuting the church, mostly because they were practicing polygamy. And the other thing I was going to say is like the one argument I could see people spinning about why he would get rid of the press. And I think people could spin this in their mind as like justifying that as okay. I'm not saying that's what I'm doing, but the logic goes like this. It may not be logic, actually. if Joseph Smith is practicing polygamy and doing these things that are against the law, but he's doing it because God is telling him to do it, and then his first counselor goes and spills the beans when God is telling him, you need to keep these things secret because this is what I want you to do, even though it's against the law, then you could see where someone would rationalize like, well, Joseph Smith was answering to God rather than the laws of the land already. So that would be his reason to protect what God was telling him to do that was above the law. Which I'm not saying that's like good. I'm just saying I could see like that's how I would have rationalized it before.
Sure. Yeah. If God's in charge, he can have you cut off Laban's head. Like God trumps all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly how I would have rationalized it too. Like the laws of the land don't matter if this is ordained of God and Joseph Smith is his prophet. He's going to let him do whatever he wants to do because that's what's supreme is getting the polygamy practiced. Joseph definitely needed to marry that many wives. That was 100% ordained by God. Not one too many did he take,
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's number, is that number 3?
Yeah, that was 13. On the 13th of the list.
What were you taught about Joseph's culpability around his death? Were you taught that he did anything? This is kind of a sister question to the previous one.
No, I was taught.
What were you taught about his state of purity at the time of his death?
That he was the prophet and he was pure. Like that he wasn't doing anything wrong.
He died like a what? Do you know the term? He died
lamb to the slaughter.
Like a lamb isn't even a sheep, right? It's like a little baby. Little baby white lamb, pure as the driven snow.
Yeah, well, and I think it kind of also symbolizes Christ. Like, he's the lamb. Joseph is the lamb. So comparing the two.
Why don't you read us some George Albert Smith, Carah?
So George Albert Smith, the 8th president of the church, declared, Joseph Smith performed his mission, and when the time came that he was face to face with death, he said, I am going like a lamb to the slaughter, but I am calm as a summer morning. I have a conscience void of offense towards God and towards all men. If they take my life, I shall die an innocent man, and my blood shall cry from the ground for vengeance, and it shall yet be said of me, he was murdered in cold blood. D&C 135-4.
So why did the people who killed him rush the jail and he was jumping out the window and they shot him? Were these people just so angry that for what he was doing with polygamy?
So it was a lot of things. And this is one of the great things about Fawn Brody's book, because Joseph, like the Mormons, wherever they went, they would grow and grow and grow and kind of start to take over the city or the county that they moved to. They did it in Missouri, and it made Governor Boggs and the Missourians so upset, frankly, because they appeared like a cult, right? I mean, if you ever saw Wild Wild Country, which is a documentary on Netflix about the Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, this is this Indian guru that moves to like Northern Oregon and starts building this hippie commune where everybody's having free love and sex, and he ends up having like 100 Rolls Royces. And it gets to the point where they're like poisoning the water supply of neighboring towns. Like if you get this religious cult basically moving in and growing and kind of taking over the politics of the local town, especially in the 19th century, you're going to start to like feel nervous and feel upset. But Joseph made it worse. If you get to his time in Nauvoo, he's mayor, he's prophet, he's head of the Nauvoo Legion. He would literally march this legion, which was like one of the largest freestanding military units outside of like Washington, D.C., in the entire United States. He would march this legion through neighboring towns just as a show of force for how big his military was. He would make alliances with both political parties where he would say, hey, in this coming election, Whigs, I'll vote for you. Oh, and Democrat, Republicans in this upcoming election, I'll vote for you. And he would split the vote and try and win political favor, promising his people to both sides. And so in so many ways, it was not just the polygamy, which was illegal, and he was lying about it. He owed people a bunch of money. There were rumors that he had had Governor Boggs in Missouri assassinated. So Governor Boggs was the governor of Missouri.
That was the extermination order governor. Right?
Yeah. So there's reasonable evidence that he had this guy named Porter Rockwell go to Missouri and try to assassinate the governor of Missouri. So Missouri was, law.
Was that before the extermination order or after?
It was after.
I mean, I could see people being like, well, if they're going to kill all of us, we should kill them first.
I mean,
that's scary, but
I mean, unless you follow Jesus, and Jesus says, love your enemies and forgive those who persecute you.
Good point.
So, I mean, Missouri's going after Joseph. He flees to another state. He's breaking the law, practicing polygamy. He's marching this legion throughout all the neighboring counties. He's destroying the printing press, and he's making all sorts of political enemies. Plus, he's taken the Masonic Lodge's most sacred ceremony, which is the Masonic Temple Lodge ceremony, the signs and the tokens, and he's incorporated them into the temple ceremony in Illinois, which is the temple ceremony that you would have experienced when you went to the temple. And the Masons don't like their super secret temple ceremony being bastardized and incorporated into another weird cultish religious temple ceremony. So for all those reasons, everybody hated Joseph Smith. Plus all the people he had, betrayed and excommunicated for telling the truth, like Oliver Cowdery. Oliver Cowdery was in the first presidency with Joseph. Oliver caught him in an affair back in the mid-1830s.
So with someone who wasn't his wife?
Yeah, Fanny Alger.
How many women?
Yeah. So Fanny Alger was allegedly Joseph's first plural wife, and she was a domestic helper between 1833 and 1835. Emma apparently caught Joseph in the barn having sex with Fanny Alger. Oliver Cowdery found out about it, called Joseph Smith an adulterer, said he was part of a dirty, filthy, nasty affair. Guess what Joseph did when Oliver rightly accused him of adultery? Guess what Joseph Smith did?
Not killed him, excommunicated him.
Exactly.
Sorry.
He excommunicated Oliver Cowdery, who was who? What did Oliver Cowdery do that was really important?
He helped write the Book of Mormon.
He was the scribe to the Book of Mormon. Did you know, were you ever told that the scribe to the Book of Mormon was excommunicated for rightly accusing Joseph Smith of adultery?
No. Not until right now.
Oh, interesting.
So is this all again from that book by David O. McKay's niece?
It's going to be in Rough Stone Rolling too.
Oh.
Yeah.
This is in Rough Stone Rolling.
Absolutely.
And people have been reading this book being like, that's okay. Well, you said it caused a lot of people to leave.
A lot of people, most people don't get through the book.
Why did the church allow Rough Stone? Do they still sell it?
They have to, because so many people were leaving the church feeling betrayed and lied to. This is part of a study we did in the mid-2010s. We, Mormon Stories, with Hans Mattson, Travis Stratford, Greg Prince, and with the help of Marlon Jensen, church historian, we surveyed 3,000 ex-Mormons about why they lost their faith. The number one reason is they said they felt lied to and betrayed once they learned the real history. So the church realized in the 2010s that if it didn't start telling the truth, it was going to lose more and more members for feeling lied to and betrayed.
And who was this person who wrote Rough Stone Rolling?
Richard Bushman was a patriarch, a stake president, and is a Harvard-trained historian who is a professor at Columbia College.
And he's still a member.
He is still a faithful member.
But he wrote all that.
But he wrote Rough Stone Rolling, which was really warmed over No Man Knows My History. You read both those books, there's almost nothing interesting that Richard Bushman included in Rough Stone Rolling that Fawn Brody didn't write in No Man Knows My History.
Maybe he just wrote it a little kinder.
He wrote it super faithfully to try and write it in a way to where people would it's sort of like these are not the droids you're looking for.
So what was his purpose in writing this book if he was a faithful...
The brethren came to him and said, write a biography of Joseph Smith that tells the truth, but does it in a way that makes people not lose their faith. That was the purpose of the book.
And he's quoted saying that?
I mean, that's backstory.
Yeah. Okay.
These are good questions.
Yeah, you're
It's
good.
times like this.
Sorry.
These are so good.
No, don't
No,
apologize.
I don't want to be sorry. I just
I
want
can
to
tell
have...
you have an attorney training.
My father did encourage me to follow his footsteps. I did not receive a law degree.
Oh, well, you're giving me the third degree. I love it.
Yeah, it's times like this where I'm like, I'll never be able to talk about Mormonism as good as John Dehlin, even if I did have, 30 years of talking about it.
In
you're just a
30 years, you'll be
Wikipedia.
way better than me, Carah.
I'll just be like doing TikTok dances. My brain will be gone in 30
As
years.
a 60-year-old?
Yeah.
Carah, you run circles around 3 years into this John Dehlin. I can guarantee you that.
No, but
For
I do
sure.
think that it is adorable how far I've come in 3 years.
No, one of the reasons I gravitated towards Carah so much, other than she was like my source of food on the mission, she did make me dinner like all the time.
Carah makes
But-
dinner?
Well, I
didn't
think
know that.
Aaron made dinner. You did
I
make this
worked.
really, really good tomato soup. I know you were the one who made that one.
I pinned things on Pinterest and told my housewife husband to go make them.
But she was always so knowledgeable about Jesus. Like, I would say that before she was a Mormon, she was Christian.
Yeah.
And that was like so refreshing to me because, again, it's the going towards whatever is truth, not just whatever you're told, but you were doing it in that light. And you're just so knowledgeable. You knew so much. You
I was in the middle of my Jesus freak phase. I
Yeah.
was reading Timothy Keller. I was reading like Christian apologetics before I even read Mormon apologetics.
you were
or
listening to
Mormonism.
Christian rap.
I was listening to Christian rap, Lecrae. I was just ready for the missionaries to knock on my door. The second that they knocked on my door, and I was like, new missionaries in our area? Great, because I'm an absolute Jesus freak. I will feed you. I will love you. I'll help, teach things. I'll make you blankets.
I've always been so amazed by the knowledge, the capacity for knowledge and facts that your brain can retain and spit out whenever you need them. So
Carah's a legend.
I try. I get really tired, and then I babble, and then I get. Hey, I'll
Carah,
take this part.
you're a brilliant and a legend. Just stop.
also you can edit
And I can
out the
edit.
babbling.
You've almost got 10,000 YouTube followers now. You're
You've got
right. You're
almost
at 10,000.
100,000 TikTok subscribers.
Yeah,
Whenever
man.
people ask me, who are you going to go visit today, Eve? I say, my friend Carah, who has 100,000 subscribers.
You're famous.
on
You're
TikTok.
famous. You're
What?
TikTok famous, Carah.
I'm not John Dehlin.
Stop cutting yourself
Not
down.
Bill Real,
You can
but
sell your TikTok. I hear people do that.
my
Followers.
retirement plan. In case you want to know, there's a YouTuber that goes by Shoe on Head, and on her Patreon, she has a $50,000 tier, and it's called "Pay Me to Shut Up." If anyone buys this, I'll go away forever. That's my retirement.
So any of this stuff, this is just kind of summarizing. Do you believe us that the church has known what we've just told you for 100 plus years? Do you, if Fawn Brody knew it, if Richard Bushman knew it, has the church known it? Church leaders, church historians.
It appears that way. It's just so difficult because obviously a lot of people I know, surprise, don't know I have all these questions. And two, I obviously want to read sources. I'm that type of person. I do trust you. I did just meet you. I trust you a lot, with my life. And you both are very logical humans. And that's part of what broke down my wall to be able to question was knowing Carah was in this spot because I'm like, she's the most logical human. Well, one of the most logical humans I know. And so, it appears to be that way and it makes me really sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason why I bring, if you remember Richard Nixon and Watergate, they always say it wasn't the break-in that led to Richard Nixon's downfall. It was the cover-up.
Yeah, the
The cover-up is always worse than the actual crime. And in this case, we shared 4 with you, but 14 total in this 3-part series of things that Mormon children, Mormon missionaries, Mormon investigators are never told. You got 4 of the 14. But the 15th point is that the church has known this for over 100 years, and it's intentionally withheld this information from its children, from its adults, from its seminary and institute students, from its BYU education students, from its missionaries, its sales force basically, and from the investigators that joined the church. Shouldn't someone know why Joseph Smith was killed before they joined the church? Shouldn't they know how many wives he had? Shouldn't they know if he was lying? Shouldn't they know if there are significant problems with the translations of the Book of Mormon or the Book of Abraham or the Book of Moses or the Joseph Smith translation? If there are major problems with the church's truth claims, isn't it a matter of informed consent, a matter of integrity, that if the church knows all this, that they tell people? Just like if I was going to buy you a car that had 4 pistons out of 6 that were totally cracked and I knew it, wouldn't it be unethical for me to sell you a car with a broken engine, withholding that information from you?
That would be unethical. And I think one of the things that is the hardest to hear and consider is not only, well, obviously you're saying like covering things up and hiding things, but doing things like destroying print press. What is it called? Print press?
Printing press.
Printing press. Or excommunicating someone who found truth they decided to share, because the whole thing about church is to go and find your own answers and obviously pray. But I mean, if you're finding truth is what, I don't know. And like, if the church is true, like everyone talks about, it should stand up to criticism. If there are things that happened and prophets are men, like obviously we know they are, and they can make mistakes, then what is wrong with people knowing the truth and making the decision for themselves if, knowing that truth, they still want to participate in the church?
Right.
Yeah.
With all of that being said, and just this large kind of brief overview of Joseph Smith as a prophet, if you remember back to like when you were a missionary in LA and to the people that you converted, what do you wish that the church would have told you that you could have then passed on to your investigators for them to make a better decision on whether or not to get baptized? And what do you think about the quick pressuring to get baptized that the missionaries were instructed to do without, basically just glossing over anything about the character of Joseph Smith?
I don't like it. I mean, I don't like the quick pressuring, being 10 years removed from my mission.
How did you feel about it when you were on your mission?
I thought it was a way to help people feel the Spirit and like to present that question, and also to establish what our expectations were with them from the get-go. So it wasn't this all like we would be like that, to put that in their minds. It wasn't always to get them to make that date. It was to let them know that was our goal.
Yeah, 'cause I remember sitting down with you with investigators and being like, so, the first time that you met somebody, I remember you telling us that like your mission president would say, set a date for a few weeks out and say, all right, March 14th, we want to invite you to be baptized. And then they would just right there on the spot say like, yes, no, or maybe.
Yeah. And I think part of that was, at least the way I've been taught, is when, when I'm praying about something or when I'm trying to make a decision, not having a firm, like when I have a decision is when I will get the answer if that is right or not. And so that was part of like creating a firm decision and opportunity. Like, is this is serious? Do you want to do this?
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously I don't agree with it now. But yeah, that's how I thought of it then. And I mean, I could see how people would say that if.
Is this the type of information not only would investigators, is this the type of information investigators should be told along with the good stuff about Joseph Smith so that they can make an informed decision? And would you have liked to have known this information before you made maybe the life choices that you've made?
Yes. I'm trying to think of a better answer, but yes, like,
would you have liked to know this before you served a mission? Because the mission force is the church's sales force. So it would be kind of like the church had a bunch of cars all with cracked engines, and they hire you, or no, they don't hire you. You pay as a volunteer to go sell for the church defective cars using your name and reputation, time and money. You're selling defective cars to unsuspecting victims without the church telling you that the cars are defective. That's kind of what they did to you.
Yeah, I think it's not really fair to put you out there in those situations too, because people were kind of mean in LA, English speaking. People could be really mean. And
psychologically damaging you for a couple.
Don't know those things and you don't have a way to respond. That's not fair. I remember a very specific experience when I was serving in a YSA ward, and there was a less active member who told us he had questions, and we're like, sure, let's talk about it. And he told us about Joseph Smith translating the Book of Mormon with a rock and a hat. And I had never heard that in my life. And my companion and I just were like, left that experience, and we were just crying. And we were luckily right near the mission president's home. And so we just called the mission president and we're like, President, like, we need to talk to you about this. This is weird. And we went and talked to him, and he's like, I mean, does it really matter how it was translated if that's how God chose to show him those words? But it's like, why weren't we taught that? We were taught about the Urim and Thummim, and it was, so it's just one of those things where, it's kind of not fair to send missionaries out when they don't have all that information, and it's not fair to let people join a church when they don't even have access to know that information. Not only it's not a lesson, but it's like you can't find that truth, and the people who tried to share that truth were kicked out.
Or it's just taken a long many years of the church members leaving, and like John was saying, people needing to have some type of source to go understand these things better from a hopefully faithful perspective, to be kind of inoculated, to know about the rock and the hat before, like an anti-Mormon comes and tells you, that people can get as many understandings of what the religion is that they're participating in. And it's taken a long time for the church to be able to be even minorly transparent, because they still have apologists that work for the church that still spin arguments and smooth things over.
And honestly, this isn't like an academic thing that happened to Von Brody. The church excommunicated me 7 years ago simply I was advocating for same-sex marriage. They didn't like that. And I had a podcast where we would talk about these issues openly, and they didn't like it. So it's not just Von Brody. It's me, it's Jeremy Reynolds, it's Bill Reel, it's the September 6th, it's Grant Palmer. Like, there's like this line of bodies, of spiritual bodies, that the church has excommunicated simply for telling the truth. And I'm one of them.
I'm really sorry.
Oh, I'm good, but it's harmful. The church has deceived people, and they've harmed people by withholding this information. That's all. Yeah. That's a bummer.
What do you think?
Is that a bummer? We just made it heavy.
It's always heavy.
Lighten it up, Carah. Lighten it up.
Oh, lighten it up? We don't need to, because the light in Eve's eyes, she still is partially in the church, so she still has the light.
Of Christ. Okay.
All right. Well, let's go to a bar and get to some sinning. What do you think there, Eve? Buy you a drink?
Don't corrupt Eve.
I need to get to my 2-year-old.
I'm just kidding. I know. We'll buy him a drink too.
Let her go, Carah. That's good.
All
Free
right.
Eve. Free Eve.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of an Adam and Eve joke, but I'm too tired.
There has been so much conflict with my name throughout my life, and as you could imagine now, it is even more conflicting. So.
All right, Eve, thanks for sitting and buckling in there with us through this highly up and down emotional process of learning some information. How do you feel overall? Feel heavy? Are we going to be able to still be friends?
Obviously,
Okay.
we're still friends. I feel like I have a lot of reading to do.
You have a lot of homework when you come see me, I guess.
Yeah.
I also am impressed with how smart you are. I love it that you're saying, well, I'm not going to believe you and Carah. I respect you guys, but yeah, do your reading. I think you'll find that most of what we say is pretty accurate here, but find out for yourself. We don't want anyone to believe us based on our authority or our reputation, or in Carah's case, her incredible charm and charisma. I'll leave it there. There might be other reasons why you would want to listen to Carah, but I'm just going to stop with charm and charisma and
I
intelligence.
could have been beguiled by the snake by now. You never know.
That's me, not you.
Yeah. That's how similar we are.
But I like that you're basically saying, let me find this out for myself. And we're not here to take faith away, believe it or not. We're just here to let people know the truth, and then they can make informed decisions. So even though I'm sad that we dumped all this on you, I guess we believe that people, well, number one, you're an adult and you agreed to come here. But number two, we believe that people should base their lives on truth. And guess where I learned that?
At church.
At
That's what
church.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Every single thing you're saying right now is exactly what the church says. And I think that's what leads people like me and Carah. Obviously, you are further down. You're further
Up or
from
down?
the
Which is it?
rod leading to the tree. But the church teaches us to find truth and not take truth just given and handed to us, but to find that truth out for ourselves. So
Totally. That's where I learned it. To be like honest.
we're literally
true, chase the other.
doing right now what they've asked us.
Yeah. So, and the truth shall set you free. All right. Well, we got to get heading out.
Wait,
Thanks so much.
the truth shall set you free, but first it shall wreck your marriage. No. The truth shall set you free, but first
not-
it'll piss you off.
No, the truth shall set you free, but not till it's finished with you. That's literally like the truest thing about life, isn't it?
Support
Carah.
Carah's Patreon. Go to Patreon, find Nuance Ho, donate to Carah, send her money, click on her donor box button. Do you have a donor box button? How do
do.
they find it?
It's in my description link.
Isn't it like buy me a coffee? Is that what
No,
it says?
not tacos. We're not talking
No,
tacos.
I'm saying you should donate more money than that. But I think,
yeah.
doesn't the link say that?
No, it's just a donor box.
Oh.
Yeah, but send her $10 a month. I think Margie and I send you $25 a month.
Thank
What do
you.
like
Bless your hearts.
support Nuance Ho, support content creators, support Carah. Now, become a monthly donor.
Thanks. I'm still trying to roll out more longer format things like this that have good information in them, that are topics that I feel like are relevant and should be covered that maybe other people in this space haven't covered yet. So if you like what I'm up to, please support me financially. That helps out a lot. Make sure to leave a comment and subscribe and hit the notification bell, all the things that are helpful for the algorithm to make sure this video gets out to more people. Obviously, liking and sharing goes a long way too. Supporting me on Patreon is a huge lift of my spirits whenever that happens. And obviously, don't forget to support Mormon Stories in any way that you can. They still create fabulous work. And John and I, people are always like, how's John? And me and John will always be good pals and good buddies. I just don't work at this desk anymore. I just show up here out of my own free will and choice, as did Eve in this chair. So thank you, Eve, so much for coming
Thanks,
and
Eve.
joining me on this
You're
episode.
welcome.
Thanks, Carah, for letting me be part of your 3-part series. What an honor.
Thank you for explaining things a million times better than I ever could. Hopefully I'll be up to that standard one day.
No, you rock, Carah.
Yeah. Well,
You're a legend already.
You're a rough stone rolling.
I'm a rough stone rolling. All right.
Rough stone hoeing.
Keep my personal life out of this. Just kidding.